Today, I would like to finish the lecture on fluid and electrolytes. This last little bit we will be covering magnesium, calcium, sodium, and potassium. First, I would like to begin by saying anytime I say, or you read, or you hear calcium and magnesium, I want you to think sedative. Okay? Sedative. Calcium and magnesium, they act like sedatives. Okay? Another thing that I really want you to think about is muscles. Calcium, magnesium, sedatives, muscles. Okay? If you want to get the magnesium and the calcium questions right, you gotta think about the muscles. Okay? Now, I would like to start by saying magnesium is excreted through the kidneys. Okay? That's going to be important. Now, let's talk about magnesium first. Now, the normal magnesium level is 1.2 to 2.1 milliequivalents per liter. Okay? So if we have hypermagnesemia, okay, then that is going to be above that 2.1 level, correct? Great. Now, I want to talk to you about some reasons why our magnesium level would be raised. First of all, it's excreted through the kidneys. So if our kidneys aren't working, magnesium is going to get backed up, yes? The next thing is antacids. They contain a ton of magnesium, so if you are popping antacids and drinking antacids, you might have hypermag. Okay? Hypermag. Now, I want you to think magnesium and calcium sedatives. Think about my muscles. So what does that mean as far as signs and symptoms concerning hypermag? Okay? First of all, my deep tendon reflexes are going to be sedated. My muscle tone is going to be weak and flaccid. My arrhythmias, can I have some? Yeah. My muscle, my heart muscle, no. I could have an arrhythmia, couldn't I? My level of consciousness is going to be sedated. My pulse, sedated. My respirations, sedated. Okay? Now, you also will have flushing and warmth with hypermag. Okay? So if you are running a magnesium, you might experience flushing and warmth in addition to being sedated. Okay? Now, actually, magnesium causes you to vasodilate. That is why Miss Dr. B constantly told us that they will give magnesium to PIH patients. Pregnancy-induced hypertension. Okay? Because that magnesium does cause them to vasodilate. It also helps with the blood pressure. And that also helps with the arrhythmias. No, it helps with seizures, okay? Seizures. Now, I want to tell you that treatment for hypermag could be ventilator support, okay? Why? Because your respirations are sedated. If they're under 12, you're going to have some help. Dialysis. Why? Kidneys aren't functioning properly. Could be the reason for the hypermag. And calcium gluconate. Okay? Calcium gluconate helps with arrhythmias. It also reverses respiratory depression. Important. Calcium gluconate reverses respiratory depression. It is the antidote for mag toxicity. Okay? Now, when you're given calcium gluconate through the IV, has to be administered very slowly. And I'm talking about 1.5 to 2.0 milliliters per minute. Important. Okay? You're going to have to take safety precautions with these people. They are sedated. Remember? Sedated. Now, on the same side of that coin, hypokalemia. Remember, calcium, magnesium, sedation, muscle. Okay? So, the causes of hyperkalemia could be hyperparathyroidism. Okay? What? Remember, your parathyroids down there at the bottom of your thyroid, they release PTH, parathyroid hormone, which causes bone calcium. It brings the calcium out of the bone and places it in the blood. Okay? Now, if you have too much PTH, then you've got too much drawing calcium out of the bones and too much calcium in the intravascular space. Now, thiazides cause you to retain calcium. Immobilization. Why? Because mobilizing yourself puts calcium back in the bones. If you're sedated, you're not doing that. So where's all your calcium? It's in your blood. Okay? Hypercalcemia. Now, what can we say the signs and symptoms of hypercalcemia is? One, the bones are going to be brittle. Because why? You got the calcium in the blood instead of in the bones. The second thing are kidney stones. Why? Most kidney stones are made from calcium. It's just a fact. So, what are we going to do to treat this? First, get that patient moving, okay? Weight-bearing exercises. They put the calcium back into the bone, right? Right. Fluids. We need to get those fluids going to prevent kidney stones. We don't want the kidneys to get involved even more so and go into acute tubular necrosis and no. Get the fluids going. Keep that down. We want to do some phospho-soda, fleet enema. Why? They have a lot of phosphorus in them. What does that mean? What does phosphorus have to do with high calcium? Well, I'll tell you. Calcium and phosphorus have an inverse relationship. When calcium is high, phosphorus is low. So therefore, if we can bring that phosphorus up, yeah, reduces the calcium. That's right, baby. Reduces the calcium. Tricky, isn't it? But we got it figured out. Okay? Steroids. What do we need to add to the diet? Phosphorus. Good idea. Same principle. Phosphorus, calcium, calcium, phosphorus. Okay? Now, what foods do we need to eat to increase our phosphorus? Anything with protein. Protein, phosphorus. Big fat ribeye? Yes. Chicken? Yes. Protein, phosphorus. Yum, yum. Okay? We need to do safety precautions, like I said, because it's a sedative. You must have vitamin D to actually cause calcium to do and go where it's supposed to. So take a trip outside for 15 to 20 minutes, soaking up some sun rays. It'll be okay for just a minute or two without your sunscreen. You need the sun to penetrate. You gotta have something here, okay? And then calcitonin, okay? It's actually the opposite of the parathyroid hormone. Calcitonin actually takes the calcium from your blood and puts it back into the bone, okay? So understand that concept? Calcitonin takes it from the blood puts it back in the bone, and parathyroid hormone takes it from the bone and puts it in the blood. Okay, now let's talk about a decrease in our magnesium and our calcium level. Remember, magnesium's normal level is 1.2 to 2.1. Hypomagnesium will be lower than that number, okay? So, what would be a reason why we would have hypomagnesium? One, diarrhea. There's a lot of magnesium in our intestines. And when we excrete it out, there it goes. Down the toilet. Magnesium, down the toilet. Hypomagnesium. Okay? The next thing is alcoholism. I don't know. Somebody one time told me that when you're drinking and you got maybe a buzz going on or got a little tipsy in the club, you don't want to eat because it's going to mess up something, the buzz. I don't know. That's what somebody told me. But I do know that alcoholics really don't eat. They would rather be drinking, okay? Which hurts on two levels. One, where do we get our magnesium? Food, okay? They're not getting that. Two, alcohol is packed with proteins. So if it's packed with proteins, how are we going to get rid of it? That's right, it diureses. We can't just go to the bathroom and sit on the toilet and poof. Expect alcohol particles to fall out in the toilet? No. It's got to come out in volume. It mixes with water, causes us to diurese. Not only that, it decreases the ADH from being released. Diuresis is what alcohol does. Now, you're not eating, you're drinking, you got some problems. Now, remember what I said about magnesium and calcium, two things. One, they act as a sedative. Two, if you want to get the mag and calcium questions right, you gotta think muscle, okay? So, when we are hypomag, that means we don't have enough sedative. What does that mean? Let me tell you. Hypo, not enough sedative, means excessive and excitable nervous system. It leads to tremors and spasms, okay? So, if you don't have enough sedative, what is your muscle tone going to be?
Rigid and tight. Rigid and tight.
Okay? Could I have a seizure from being so rigid and tight? Yes. Guess what? Your airway is a smooth muscle. So what might happen? Stridor. Stridor. Yes. You can have arrhythmias. Your heart is a muscle. If it's rigid and tight, what's going to happen? Not good. Not good. Mind changes. Any kind of mind changes. And swallowing problems. Smooth muscle. Okay? Now, let's talk about treatment for hypomag. First, let's give them some mag. We got this thing figured out. Yes, we do. We need to give some mag, but we need to check their kidney function before and during because magnesium is excreted through the kidneys. Okay? Now, we also need to put on seizure precautions. Remember, they're all and we need to teach them, hey, you got to eat some magnesium too. Now, what foods are high in magnesium, okay? I got this thing figured out, baby. It's greens and seeds. What do I mean by that? Just listen. Spinach, green. Mustard greens, green. Broccoli, green. Turnip, greens. Cucumber, green. Green beans. Kale, seeds. We got pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, sesame seeds, and flax seeds, okay? Now you could throw in some peppermint and some halibut, but the main rest of it, greens and seeds, baby, greens and seeds. Halibut, peppermint, how odd. Anyway, okay? So, what do you do if you're giving your patient some mag and they start flushing and sweating? It is a reaction of mag, but hey, we're brand new nurses, so better go ask somebody that knows something. Rather be safe than sorry. Okay? Now, let's talk about hypocalcemia. Same thing, same thing. They're sedatives. Think muscles. Hypo, not enough sedative, okay? The normal calcium level is 9 to 10.5. Hypo is going to be below 9, okay? This could be caused from something right here, you know? Maybe it's hypoparathyroidism. Maybe your parathyroids aren't working like they're supposed to. Maybe you've had some kind of radical neck dissection or a thyroidectomy. Whatever the cause, maybe those little parathyroids got nicked and now they're not producing enough PTH. And without enough PTH, your calcium builds up, right? Okay. If you don't have enough PTH, what happens? The blood is not being replenished with calcium. So therefore you have hypocalcemia. Okay? Now, same symptoms. Rigid, tight. Okay? Clank, clank, but in another way. Okay? Seizures, yes. Arrhythmias, yes. Stridor, yes. Okay? You can also have Cushbeck's. It's a test. You can't have it, but it is a test where you tap on the cheek. Now this applies for hypocalcemia and hypomagnesemia. Okay? Hypomag. We think of it mainly with hypocal, but it's really with both. But you tap on the client's cheek, and what happens? They start having facial twitches. Okay? Also, the Trussell sign. It's where you put the blood pressure cuff on the arm, and you pump it up higher than systolic. And within 3 minutes, the hand starts twitching and tremoring and gotta get some calcium in. Okay? Now, the deep tendon reflexes, once again, those things are going to be increased. You go around flapping some deep tendon, step back. Those deep tendon reflexes are quick. Okay? They're increased because you don't have enough sedative going on. Okay? Scoot your little rolly chair back because you might get whopped. Not enough sedative. Okay? Now, what can we do to help? Well, vitamin D, again, helps utilize calcium, puts it where it needs to go, get you some rays. Okay? Phosphate binders, once again, phosphate and calcium have an inverse relationship. What about a phosphate binder? Oscal, Renagel, Phoslo. Okay? These things bind the phosphate. They decrease phosphate, which increases calcium. Right. There we go, being tricky again. We got it figured out. We're watching you, Bonnie. We know what's going on. We know what's going on, right? Okay. Now, we also need to give IV calcium slowly, and your patient better be on a heart monitor when you're giving this stuff, okay? Now, moving on to sodium. I love sodium. Sodium and water are just my favorite things to talk about. Sodium and water are stuck together like glue. Okay? Now, when I say sodium, you say neuro. Sodium, neuro, sodium, neuro. Okay? Because that's what I want you to think. Because let me tell you something. The brain does not like sodium fluctuations. And I'll tell you why in just a moment. Okay? The normal sodium lab value is 135 to 145. Today we are going to talk about differences in that. First, I want to talk about hypernatremia. Now, sodium is the only electrolyte that cares about water. And it does care about water. Let me tell you, it loves some water. Okay? They stuck together like glue. Okay? Now, hypernatremia equals dehydration. What do I mean? I got a ton of sodium in my body? Well, actually, yes, but let me say this. Water, sodium, together, they love each other, okay? Hypernatremia is actually a water problem. That's right, a water problem. What happens is your water is decreased and it leaves the sodium. So that means, yes, you are hypernatremic compared to the amount of fluid in your vascular space. That's what makes hypernatremia. You don't have enough water in the picture, okay? Now, what are some of the causes? Hyperventilation. Now remember, I have told you that sodium and water stick together like glue, except here, okay? Hypernatremia, hyponatremia, and I'll tell you why. When you hyperventilate, are you blowing off water and sodium? No. You are getting rid of insensible water by hyperventilating. So what happens there? Your water runs off and leaves sodium. High and dry, baby. Okay? Hypernatremia. And heat stroke. You're losing so much water, you're not losing as much sodium, are you? Once water runs off, leaves sodium. And diabetes insipidus. Let me tell you what happens, okay? You have an awesome mechanism, the thirst mechanism. And what happens is your body senses the osmolality in your serum to get high. And when it does, it kicks in quick, makes you thirsty. Okay? So you gulp some water and you make that better rapidly. You fix it. Okay? It's fixed. Everything's good. Okay? Now, the only thing about diabetes insipidus, remember, it's an ADH problem, and ADH gets rid of water. Remember? Now, aldosterone got rid of water and sodium, or held on to water and sodium, but ADH, remember, is just kind of a water thing. But not to mention, diabetes insipidus is an inability to actually concentrate your urine. So it's flowing out like crazy, and it's not concentrated. So once again, what did that old water do? It ran off, and it left sodium high and dry. Okay? Now, the main things I want to say that are not on the handout, really, if you have an impaired thirst mechanism, Most people in normal settings are going to be able to fix their thirst problem by simply going and getting a drink, right? Okay? But if you're old, or if something's wrong with you and you don't have that thirst mechanism, you're not going to know to do it. Hypernatremia. What if you're out in the desert, you got stranded, and you don't have water? Okay? You can't fix it anyway. Hypernatremia. Not good. Okay? So, I just want to tell you, hypernatremia is really a water problem. And I'm fixing to break it down. What that water does. Okay? First of all, I want to tell you signs and symptoms. You're going to be thirsty. You're already dehydrated when you get thirsty. Okay? You might have a swollen tongue. Now, this is a late and serious sign. Swollen tongue. Okay? Now, I want to tell you about this old nasty, unfaithful water. Sodium and water love each other. They got married a long time ago. Where water goes, sodium goes. Where sodium goes, water goes. Not here. That old goofy water runs out of the body. Somebody else leaves old sodium by itself. What happens? Well, the biggest thing is it starts messing with sodium's brain. It starts messing with its neurosystem. Sodium gets so messed up in the brain doesn't like sodium to be messed up, does it? No, it doesn't. If it wasn't for that old unfaithful water, that wouldn't be happening, would it? Okay, seriously. Really, the reason why we have neuro changes is because water leaves the vascular space, leaves a ton of sodium in there. It's very, very concentrated. So water from the cells, including the brain cells, tries to seep out of the cells and get in that vascular space to make it all good, to kind of even things out. So then the cells shrink, causing neuro changes, okay? Now, what are we going to do? We're definitely not going to give them sodium. They got enough sodium. We're going to have to get the water back into the picture. Call water. Tell water, come back, water. We want you back, water. We need you back. We're going to give them IV fluids, okay? We're going to dilute them with IV fluids. Not the ones that have any sodium in them, though, okay? Now, we're going to have to do daily weights. Duh. Input and output, okay? If you got a sodium problem, you have a fluid problem, okay? Now, I also want you to know that with tube feeding, the clients do have the potential to become dehydrated. So we really need to keep a close check on that to make sure that not only are they receiving the feedings they need, but they also are receiving the hydration that is needed, okay? Now, hyponatremia. What does that mean? It means not enough salt. It means not enough sodium, okay? So here once again, the married couple, okay? Is this because we don't have enough sodium? No. Could be, maybe, in some crazy thing like we nearly drowned in salt water. I mean, maybe, okay? But mainly, we're going to think about hyponatremia is not about not enough salt. It's about too much water compared to salt. We're comparing the two. That's what we're doing. That's where we're getting our hyper and hypo, okay? So really, again, it's the water's problem. What happens, okay? Well, the causes. Drinking too much plain water when we have lost water and sodium, okay? For instance, we ran a huge marathon and we've lost a lot of sodium and we've lost a lot of water, but instead of putting both in with Gatorade, we're just going to drink a ton of water. That does not even out. okay? Or you've got the patient in the psych ward that loves water. They love water so much, they drink water constantly. Psychogenic polydipsia. They like the way a ton of water makes them feel. Makes me feel bloated. They like it, okay? So they are sitting at the water fountain drinking water all day long, every day. What happens? Okay? Can their body just make enough salt to keep up with their water? No, they're drinking way too much water. Salt can't keep up, can it? No. Okay? If we give our clients D5W, a lot of it, that's sugar and water, sugar and water. Well, okay, but we need some sodium to keep up with our water, don't we? So now we got more water, less sodium. Syndrome of inappropriate antidiuretic hormone. Here once again, an ADH thing, we've got way more water than we even have the potential for sodium. Way more water than the potential for sodium. Okay? Now, our signs and symptoms are going to be, ooh, I'm overloaded, I have a headache, I have a coma, and I'm going to get a seizure. That's what happens. Okay? Remember, the neuro does not like it when sodium is messed up. The client needs some sodium. They're hyponatremic. Be careful with that sodium. You need to give it slowly. The brain doesn't like quick fluctuations in sodium. Hollow, hollow, hollow. Be like a bipolar brain. Manic, depressed, manic, depressed. No, brain don't like that. Okay? If you are having neuro problems, we need a hypertonic solution, right? Hypertonic is going to pull sodium. Pull. What is it going to do? It's packed with particles, okay? So it's going to pull fluid into the vascular space, right? Hopefully level this thing out. This would be 3% normal saline, 5% normal saline. Okay, potassium. Let's wrap it up with the potassium. When I think potassium, man, I'm thinking of one thing right here. Okay? The normal potassium level is 3.5 to 5.0. Okay? Very minimal margin. Can't err too far on either side right here with potassium. It is excreted through the kidneys. So, if the kidneys are not working, potassium goes up. Whew! We don't want potassium to go up, I can tell you that right now. Hyperkalemia, that would be anything over 5.0, right? Kidney problems. There once again, it's going to cause it to go up. Now, aldactone, remember what it is? It's the diuretic that holds on to potassium. But let me tell you, that can switch you over very quickly to hyperkalemia, okay? Signs and symptoms starts with muscle twitching, okay? And weakness. And then flaccid, oh gosh, paralysis. These can be life-threatening arrhythmias when you're thinking about the heart. EKG changes with hyperkalemia, I always think of those tall, tinted T waves. Okay, that's what I think of. There's others. Bradycardia, different things like that. Now, let me tell you, treatment, we are going to have to dialysize this patient if something does not happen. We cannot have this potassium running rampant in the body. It will cause some major problems. VFib. VFib. Okay, that's dead. Almost. Okay? VFib. So we are going to have to, if we have to, we're going to have to dialysize this patient and pull that potassium off. Okay? Calcium gluconate, remember what it does? It helps with the respiratory depression, but also mainly, in this case, we're talking about helps with arrhythmias, right? Now, glucose and insulin. What? Glucose not only helps, insulin not only helps move glucose into the cell, it actually helps move potassium into the cell. Who knew? Not me. I didn't know that, but okay. Now, anytime you give IV insulin, you need to worry about hypoglycemia and hypocalcemia. Okay. Now, remember, let me say this. Sodium and potassium have an inverse relationship. See, I knew I liked sodium. I do. I love sodium. Okay? I love sodium. Now, they have an inverse relationship. So, if my client's potassium level is high, I can give sodium polystyrene sulfonate, also known as K-exolate, okay? So I can identify that two ways. One, it says sodium to begin with, and two, K-exolate starts with a K, which stands for potassium, right? Okay, so if they are hyperkalemic, I can give this sodium, and what happens is the sodium switches places with the potassium in the GI system, in the GI tract, okay? But remember, if we're switching places with the sodium, we got to make sure that we keep the patient hydrated, right? We want to provide enough water so, you know, one doesn't run off without the other, okay? We need to push fluids there. Now, hypokalemia is going to be under 3.5. The causes, vomiting, suctioning. Why? Because potassium loves our tummy. And if you're throwing it up, or if you're sucking it up, you're going to be losing potassium, okay? Now, diuretics, unless it's aldactone, who actually holds on to potassium, and not eating. We get our potassium from foods. And if you have cancer and if you're very sick, you're not going to be able to eat like you need to. Okay? Now, the EKG things that I really want to concentrate on with potassium would be PVCs and VTAC. Okay? PVCs and VTAC, hypokalemic. Okay? So what do we need to do? We need to give some potassium. Okay? Now, I've got some instructions on giving potassium. We ain't just going to give it and go. We'll get to that in just a moment. Now, what else could we do? Give aldactone. What does aldactone do? It causes you to retain potassium. We need to. We're hypokalemic. Okay? We also need to eat more potassium. What foods can we find potassium in? I narrowed this one down for us, okay? Greens, again. Vegetables and fruits. Throw in a little tuna, halibut, potatoes, and lima beans. There's your potassium right there, baby. Greens, vegetables, fruits, tuna, halibut, potatoes, lima beans. Okay? Now, let's talk about what we need to do when we give potassium, okay? The major thing with potassium is it causes GI upset. I don't know why, because it's down there anyway, but we need to give potassium with food. PO potassium, that is, okay? We need to assess the urine output before and during potassium. Why? It's excreted through the kidneys. Always put potassium on a pump, IV pump. Never, and I mean never, ever, ever, ever push potassium. It means it equals instant death. You don't want that. I don't want that. You need to mix it well and let your person know it's going to burn a little bit during the infusion. Okay? Thank you.